Hey y'all, so today we're looking at the Simply Rugged Sourdough Pancake Holster. Basically what this is a belt holster, two-position belt holster that they basically make for medium to large frame revolvers. This one happens to be set up for Smith & Wesson end frame 4-inch barrel. I have my 329 PD sitting over here for it, and that's what we're going to use to look at the holster today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the holster on the bench, talk about craftsmanship and everything, and then I'll show it on my person like always. So this particular review, there's a lot of reasons I like this holster. Sadly, there's one reason why I don't like it and why it might not necessarily be for everybody, but I'll get into that in a little bit. So first, let's look at the craftsmanship of the holster. Now, I did buy this used, so if it looks a little extra beat up for someone that only has wore it for a few days, that's because I bought it used, but it was in good condition, and I guess it's a testament to the quality. But the stitching on this, as usual, real good stitching, what you would expect from a decent holster maker. Leather cut, they use a good thick piece of leather, so it's good and solid there. You know, it's not real flimsy. Let's see. So the finish on this is actually really nice. I think they call it their oxblood red or something like that. I figured I'd have to look again on the website, but it's got a nice finish to it. I'm real happy with that. I got so many holsters that are just the generic russet brown or tan that you see. To have something a little bit different color is nice. So let's insert the gun. Right. The other things I like about this holster is it rides really high, really high, right? So it completely covers your rear sights, so they're protected. And with Smith & Wessons, these can be a little delicate, not necessarily delicate, but if you strike them hard, they will bust off and break because it's just a little blade in there. So you know, anybody that's seen enough Smith & Wesson pictures, you'll eventually see a couple little chipped sights, but they're fully protected in there, and it's nice because the leather rides so high, it kind of creates a very neutral print. So like if, you know, your shirt gets pulled tighter for whatever reason, you're not going to see the hammer, you're not going to see the cylinder, you're just going to see this line here, which is really nice. But even though it does ride real high, it still, at least with this gun, allows for a full firing grip as you draw. I did notice that, okay, so with it not on your belt, very easy reholster, right? It's completely open for you to stick the gun in, even though the cylinder is kind of wide. But on my belt, I did notice that when the holster is on your belt and pulled tight, it does close the mouth a little bit, making it a little bit, you have to like finagle it a little bit more for a draw, and you'll actually notice like along here where like the little bit of leather is mushed, and it's just the tiniest little bit, it still holds its mouth pretty good, and that's to be expected with a holster this size when reholstering something this big. This holster is set up for two different carry positions. It's set up for like your strong side 3 to 5 o'clock position with a slight cant, and then it's set up for a cross draw position via the second loop here on the side. Now the cross draw, while it looks cool, is pretty much, at least in my opinion, all but useless for anything other than open carry, or if you were at the range or, you know, hunting or something like that, because when you're dealing with a gun this size, having a cross draw, and again, this might just be my personal preference, for me it just doesn't work because it's you know, it's sticking at an odd angle at that point, and it's just too much to conceal carry. Perhaps with a smaller gun it might work, or maybe if I was differently proportioned, it might work. But with that being said, let's take a look at it on my person. Alright, so here we are once again at crotch cram level. Yes, I'm going to patent that someday. And here we're going to talk about what I think about it on my belt, and I guess sadly discuss its like one fatal flaw, at least for me. So here's on my belt. The ride height is really nice. I like how it's kind of a high-rise holster, which is really nice, especially when you're carrying an end frame. But the one fatal flaw with this is it is not a flat-backed holster, and that the reason why that's a problem is especially with revolvers. If it's not flat backed, you're going to have kind of a pressure point. You'll notice here, I don't know how well it shows up, but there's actually a gap here on my belt where like the belt's not against my body because the holster's pulling my belt away from the loops of the holster are kind of pulling my belt away from my body because the loops are about, I guess, an inch away from my body because the cylinder of the gun, because the loops are centered in the gun, they're kind of creating a pressure point pulling the gun. The Rather than pulling the gun to me, it's pulling the gun into me. So it's kind of creating a pressure point where right here, where I actually wore this yesterday for a couple hours, had to do some errands, and after about 2 hours, I was wishing I could have gone to my car and taken it off because it basically pulled the cylinder, it pulled the gun into my body and it was riding on my hip where it didn't matter if I had it here at about a 3 o'clock or further back at about a 4:35. It didn't matter. It would eventually start causing irritation due to it not being a flat back holster. And then once I go back up to the tabletop, I'll show you the difference in what that is and why it's important for certain guns. But other than that, that being aside, let's look at how it conceals. Um, right, so here's just a T-shirt, and I don't know how well you can see, but it conceals pretty damn good. Like that's kind of the thing that I really like about this holster, and one of the reasons why I'm kind of sad that it doesn't work for me necessarily because it conceals an end frame, and that's the thing that we need to remember here. Like you might occasionally see the slightest little print of like something, but it doesn't look like a gun. But we're concealing an end frame here. This isn't a J frame. This isn't a little Glock 42. This is a full size Smith & Wesson end frame. So, minimal to no printing at all. Very well concealed. And again, this is just a t-shirt. You put a jacket on over this, it's gone. So, really happy with the concealment aspect of the holster, right? Draw is pretty good. Draw is real nice and smooth on it. Again, for an end frame, that's pretty good. Reholster, again, is pretty smooth. Like I said, the holster mouth closes a little tiny bit being on your body. That's to be expected, but, a simple wiggle and it's in. So, that's what I think about it on my person, and let's go back up to the table. Alright, so here we are back at tabletop view, and I figured before I go any further, I'll talk more about what I meant by the flat back holster and why that's so important. Now I'm going to flip both of these holster over. This is 1791 for a 1911, for anybody wondering. But you'll see there's kind of a difference here between the two holsters. You notice how this one, right, the entire back is flat, and if I were to like push this out all the way, you'd have basically the piece of leather and then the gun rides on top of it, and the second piece of leather is kind of what holds the gun in. Whereas with this holster, if I flatten this holster out all the way, right, you can kind of see there's equal amounts of the gun on either side of the leather. So what that does is, because this is flat, when you put your belt through the loops, basically what happens is the belt pulls the leather to you rather than pulling the gun to you. So when you have it on you, this entire back is what is what against your body and doesn't create any pressure points. Whereas with this, especially with a large gun like this, which for anybody in the comments, and I'm foreseeing this, I'm going to say for anybody in the comments saying, well, what do you expect? It's a big heavy gun. The 329 PD weighs 26 ounces, so it actually weighs half of what the 1911 weighs, but I figured I would just mention that for anybody wondering. That's one of the reasons why this is such a deal breaker for me. But anyway, now that I took care of the commenters, um, what it does is, because you've got the cylinder, so much of the gun protruding like that, you're going to put this against your body, right? This is where it's going to ride against your body, and then you're going to put your belt through here, and when you cinch down the belt, it's going to basically pull on it and pull this into your body, creating that pressure point. Whereas if it was a flat back holster, um, it wouldn't create that problem, and you would have a much more comfortable carry. So that's, like I said, that's the only thing I don't like about this holster. Everything else I like about it. I like the quality of the leather work. I like that they use decent material. I like the finish. I like the draw. And I like how it conceals. But sadly, that is pretty much the one thing that I don't like, and what kind of, at least for me, kind of makes it a deal breaker. I suppose, maybe as a cross draw it would work. I wore that as a cross draw for about 5 minutes, just walking around the house, and it looks cool as hell, but at least for me, it does not conceal even in the slightest, because you've got, basically the grip of the gun sticking out at a weird angle at the front of you, and there's just no way to conceal that. I mean, maybe if you were just sitting down and had like a sweatshirt on, like I know some people, if they're driving in a car a lot, that would be a popular carry position, because the gun's in front of you rather than on your side or partially behind you. But other than that, at least with a gun this big, I don't consider that a good option for concealed carry. That's more of a range thing, or if you're hunting. But that's my thoughts on the Simply Rugged sourdough pancake holster. So I even like the name. That's a shame about this, is I even like the name. I know there's several people online that have reviewed these and love them. Um, like I said, just in my experience, it just isn't for me. But that's my thoughts on it. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down below, and have a good day.